For a long time, I've been a fan of humorous reviews of different shows I've seen, and some of those reviews, most notably the ones by the Nostalgia Critic, have led me to watch different shows that I wouldn't have normally watched, like Gargoyles, for example. I've been looking for a review of Winx Club along the same lines for a few days, only to find that there wasn't any. If I want something to exist in this world, I have the power to make it happen myself. So here is my Winx Club review. I'm actually hoping to do episode-by-episode reviews of this show, because I don't think it's fair to make a final opinion on something without having first seen all the episodes. So I'm just going to start with Season 1. Some important information about Winx Club is that it was made in Italy, and there are no English dubs that encompass the entire series. There have been 4 English dubs, the Cinelume dub, which spans from seasons 1 to 4, the 4Kids dub, which spans from 1 to 3, the Nickelodeon dub from 1 to 6, and the Duart dub, which covers the 7th season. For the most honest adaptation, I'm going to watch the Cinelume dub. Before I dig into the first episode, which I have actually already seen a number of times, I just want to say that I feel like Winx Club is very badly in need of a reboot. I've heard the majority of the fans feel the show went downhill after season 3, and guess what? There were 4 more seasons after that, with another one currently being written. And no, I don't mean the World of Winx series on Netflix, I mean another installment to the main Winx story. Season fucking 8. You might be asking, I don't know, Summer, the show only came out in 2004. Isn't it a little early to reboot it? I personally don't think so. I mean, the last movie in the Amazing Spider-Man series came out in 2014, and here we are 3 years later with a completely new Spider-Man. Yep, a brand spankin' new Spider-Man. Give me your attention, baby. Sorry, I had to. I say just Spider-Man that shit and make Winx Club all over again. Even take Marvel's path and make the teenage characters look more teenage. Andrew Garfield was fine as hell, but he didn't really look like a teenage boy. Tom Holland, on the other hand, is more convincing. Considering that Winx Club is animated, you don't even have to hire teenage actors. Just draw them more like kids, and less like the other mother from Coraline. There are other things I'd like to see different in a Winx Club reboot. Maybe less plot holes? I'll get to that eventually. I'm sure a reboot is going to happen, maybe not in the near future, but someday. Winx Club is such a cash cow that it'd be stupid not to reboot it at some point. Did you know that they have an entire section of a theme park in Italy dedicated to the Winx? Said theme park is called Rainbow Magic Land, which sounds pretty sweet, honestly. I actually went to Rome a couple of years ago, and although I didn't go to Rainbow Magic Land, I spotted actual Winx Club merch for sale. Maybe it's not that big of a cash cow in America, but in Europe, especially Italy, people adore it. I mean, when you think Italian cartoons, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe Witch, which was a very similar show that was overshadowed by the Winx and has since been cancelled, or Gormiti, which, I don't even want to talk about that. So anyways, let's talk about Winx Club Season 1, Episode 1, An Unexpected Event. We open in the fictional city of Gardenia and see our red-headed teenage protagonist, Bloom, sleeping in her room. Her mom walks in and tricks her into thinking there was school today, but alas, there is not, because Bloom is on summer vacation. She was up really late reading a book called Fairies, Myth or Reality, so maybe she's a conspiracy theorist. If I was writing the show, I wouldn't just stop there. The moon landings were fake. The Earth is flat. Everyone in the government is a reptile. That would be a fun little character to have in a kids' show. Maybe it'll make them think. Bloom is kind of pissed that she has to stay in town for her summer break and help her mother with the flower shop instead of going on a vacation alone with her friends. I don't know, but in my experience, 16-year-old girls just don't go on vacation by themselves without something really bad happening. Liam Neeson's daughter went on vacation with her friend, and you know what happened? 3 action thriller films about Liam Neeson doing badass shit. And on a more serious note, Natalie Holloway disappeared only a year after this episode of Winx first aired. Yeah, that got dark. I'm sorry. Her parents cheer her up with a new bicycle, which she was hoping was a scooter. She's obviously disappointed, but she doesn't complain, and she rides to the park with her pet rabbit, Kiko. On the way, she runs into Mitzi, a mean girl from her school who just got a brand new scooter. Mitzi proceeds to gloat about the vacation she's going on this summer, which is pretty convenient considering Bloom had just mentioned going away to her parents earlier. Bloom brushes this off and goes on her way to the park. I don't think Bloom's story is very engaging thus far. She has loving parents, a nice home, and she goes to school. None of that is really interesting. Maybe they're trying to play up the ordinary girl idea, but this would have been made a little better if her life actually sucked. Like, we know Mitzi's kind of a bitch, but I think everyone who's been to high school has encountered one of these. Does Bloom have a lot of friends otherwise, or is she relentlessly bullied? We don't know. I guess the writers didn't want to have to deal with Bloom leaving any friends she could have possibly had behind when leaving for magic school. So anyway, Bloom arrives at the park, and literally as soon as she sits down, Kiko starts screaming, as rabbits do, and gets his owner's attention and drags her over to an altercation between a fairy, Stella, and an ogre, Nut. Stella seems to be handling herself well at first, but she's quickly overpowered and her magic scepter is taken from her. Bloom decides to intervene and discovers she has magic powers. Stella is freed from the horde of little demon creatures holding her down and defeats them and Nut easily. Before we get to learn any more, Stella faints and Bloom somehow gets her back to her house. How this happens is a mystery. She couldn't have ordered an Uber because this takes place in 2004, nor could the little twig have carried Stella all the way back to her house by herself. I'm assuming Mike and Vanessa, Bloom's parents, drove Stella back to their house. Must have been a pretty weird sight for the neighbors to see the family carrying a lifeless-looking girl into their house. Nut is kind of having a shitty day after this. He's being reprimanded by 3 shadowy figures who are pissed that he didn't successfully steal Stella's scepter. Nut tries to remedy this by summoning a budget Navi with nipple rings. Hunting troll. The troll takes a whiff of a scrap of denim that was torn from Bloom's jeans and identifies her scent, and they go off looking for her so they can fuck shit up. We cut over to Bloom's house where her father is reasonably freaking out over the strange girl passed out on their couch. Bloom tells her parents that Stella is a fairy, but he is having none of that, and instead suggests taking her to the hospital. Stella wakes up and supports Bloom's argument by turning the phone into vegetables. I mean, at this point her parents should have shit themselves, but they're only phased for a few minutes here. Who knows? She claims that Bloom is a fairy, and they go to Bloom's room, where Stella pitches the idea of going to the Althea College for Fairies. Okay, Bloom, I'd be excited too, but seriously, I wouldn't just eat all of this up so easily. All Bloom knows about Stella is that she was getting curb-stomped by the ogre, but that's it. For all she knows, Stella could be a villain and Shrek could be the good guy. There's no indication that would prove to Bloom that Stella isn't just some villain who's trying to gain Bloom's trust to use her for evil. They blue-skidoo to Althea just to get a closer look at the school, and Bloom is officially convinced. The troll, Nut, and the ghoul creatures find Bloom's house and break in, but Stella and Bloom are ready to fight. Bloom leads the ghouls outside, leaving Stella, the more experienced fighter, inside to fight the troll and ogre. Bloom really doesn't even do any fighting. She gets distracted by her pet rabbit running around inside a pot, and then Stella throws Nut through the window and on top of the ghouls. So, yay. Stella's fight comes outside, but she tells Bloom not to worry, because she called the specialists. Who? Love interests. That's who, which, I hate everything about these motherfuckers. They literally only exist to date the Winx girls, and that's it. So here we have Riven, the token sexist douchebag, Prince Sky, Stella's designated love interest, Timmy, the nerd, and Brandon, Bloom's designated love interest. I really think the whole show would just be better without the obligatory heterosexual romance, when they could just pair the girls off with each other, or heck, keep romance out of it altogether. But since this is 2004 and even children's television 13 years later can't get away with even subtle or downplayed gay romances without 1 million fucking moms getting up in arms over it, we have the specialists. Gross. Altogether, they defeat the tiny demons and the troll, but Nut gets away. The boys take the troll into custody and teleport away. Hey, wait a minute. Why did none of the neighbors see this? I mean, they were fighting in Bloom's front yard. Do the family with no surname, do they have no neighbors? They kind of hint that everyone is just inside watching TV, what with that clip of Mitzi, but still. At this point, Bloom has fully decided that she wants to go to Althea with Stella, and her parents allow this for some reason, despite the extensive damage to their house. I'm sorry, Eugenio Straffi, but my disbelief has not been suspended. If this was the real world, the government would have intervened, and Stella would be at Area 51 or some shit like that. Or, on a less dire note, Bloom would actually have to fill out some goddamn paperwork telling her high school that she's dropping out instead of just leaving. Like what we do in the real world. Okay, yeah, I get that this is a fun show meant for little kids, but I think they can get away with including some elements to suspend the disbelief of the adult viewership without completely boring kids out of their minds. So, anyway, Stella transports them all to the realm of magics, and they go off to explore the school, and that's where this episode ends. Yay. Well, this episode was okay. I probably would like it better if I hadn't watched it 50 times in the past 5 years while trying to get into the series. I'll probably have a better outlook when my favorite fairy comes on screen next episode. Any guesses who that is? Leave your answer in the comments below. Thank you for listening to this review, and be sure to like and subscribe. Bye!